Greetings, dear students. I extend my warm welcome to you all to the Andhra Pradesh Residential School Educational Institutions online lecture series. Since we are all following online lecture series these days, we are all being exposed to new learning styles. In this regard, I take great opportunity and immense pleasure in teaching you all a well-known grammar topic, that is relative clauses. This is Kishore Kumar Naredla, PGT in English, APRS Boys, Appalrajgudem. While dealing this topic, I prepared few slides for your convenience so that you would be able to understand the topic clearly from the basic point. I would elaborate the topic in detail starting from word, types of relative clauses. Before I begin this lecture, I request all of you follow the slides slowly and make a note of these things. I will follow an inductive way of teaching in this lecture so that you will be able to follow and understand the topic from general to the particular. So the points to be covered in this lecture are clearly mentioned in the second slide. Let us quickly glance through the topics that we are going to cover in this lecture. First of all, let us begin with the definition of the word, the difference between subject and predicate, difference between phrase and clause, types of clauses, independent clause and dependent clause, relative clause definition and its types, defining relative clause and examples, non-defining relative clause and examples, basic difference between defining relative clause and non-defining relative clause, sample exercise to be done on defining relative clause and sample exercise to be done on non-defining relative clause. We are going to learn about these things in detail in this lecture.
Early English linguists often confused with a question. In communication, be it English or any other vernacular language, which one comes first? Is it the spoken form or written form? You may have got the same doubt in your regular interactions. Basically, if you analyze this question, spoken form comes first because script was added to the speech. So in English language, which one comes first? Word is defined as a speech sound or a combination of sounds. Its representation in writing. It symbolizes or communicates a meaning or plurality of meanings. It may consist of a single morpheme or combination of morphemes. Branch of linguistics that studies word structures called morphology. Not get confused with the words like morpheme and morphology. Morpheme is a word or a part of a word that has meaning, not be divided into smaller or meaningful segments without changing its meaning, leaving a meaningless reminder. Say it is just a segment in a word. Morphology is the study of morphemes. You understand it in an example. If you say hi to someone, he or she may reply back to you by saying hi. It is a formal expression. It has some meaning embedded in it. Same fashion, if you talk to someone in Telugu or in any language that you like, words that you use in your communication really convey the meaning or your inward intention to the listener. Or when you articulate a word, you use your speech sound. That speech sound signifies something to the listener. The combination of speech sounds convey a meaning, conveys some meaning. Whatever is spoken will have some meaning or plurality of meanings. In short, word is a basic unit in a sentence. Combination of words gives certain meaning. Now let's learn the difference between subject and predicate. Subject of the sentence is what the sentence is about. Sentence: the cat is sleeping in the sun. The word cat is the subject. Predicate is the part of a sentence or a clause that tells what the subject is doing or what the subject is. In order to have a complete sentence, each sentence must have a subject and a verb. These two parts of speech are the fundamental part of the subject. Predicate. that make up a sentence. Every sentence has a subject and a predicate, or it is not considered a complete sentence. Most of the time, the subject comes at the beginning of a sentence, in which case it is very easy to identify. To observe the slide, subject indicates who or whom, or the person who does the action. It can be anybody. As predicate signifies the action done. To make it clear, a sentence is nothing but the combination of subject and predicate. Predicate is the part of a sentence or a clause that tells what the subject is doing or what the subject is. Let's take the same sentence from before. The cat is sleeping in the sun. The clause sleeping in the sun is the predicate. It's dictating what the cat is doing. The predicate is an action word. The predicate is the rest of a sentence that modifies a subject, or it shows what a subject is acting. A predicate is also called the object of a sentence. Let us observe few examples here. First example. A boy is looking to hide himself during the rain. In this sentence, a boy is the subject and is looking to hide himself during the rain is the predicate. Looking to hide himself is the action word in the statement. Similarly, the laptop is placed on the table for charging. In this sentence, the laptop is a subject, is placed on the table for charging is the predicate. If you observe the remaining sentences, he hits his car with a pole while parking. Japan is known as the technology hub of the world. Jonathan is feeling tired and wants to sleep. The milk is very good for a healthy body. These examples, you can identify the subject and the predicate, and the combination of subject and predicate gives you the complete sense after you read it. A sentence in English language can be divided into various parts. Each part of a sentence serves its relative purpose and has some specific characteristics. While all of this seems simple, there is still a lot of confusion that arises between different parts of a sentence. One of the most puzzling pair of speeches is a clause and a phrase. Clauses and phrases are two very different parts of a sentence, but some of their similar features make it difficult for the learners of English language to distinguish between the two. A clause is a group of words in a sentence which contains a subject and a verb. For example, the boy is playing. In this sentence, boy is a subject and playing is the verb, so that the part boy is playing is a clause because it has both subject and verb. A clause might also contain an object along with the subject, which makes it stand alone as a complete sentence. One of the easiest ways to distinguish between a clause and a phrase is that a clause is a set of words that makes complete sense and does not require any additional helping words to complete it. Let's observe this in an example. Sarah smiled. In this two-word simple sentence gives you complete sense and it is understandable. It consists of a subject and a verb. Thus, it is a clause. A single sentence may have one clause, like the previous example, or it may have more than one clause in it. Let's observe another example. I looked everywhere, but the cat was gone. The above sentence contains two clauses. I looked everywhere and cat was gone. In the same manner, longer and more complicated sentences might also contain more than two clauses. A phrase is a group of words in a sentence that does not contain a subject and a verb. I have to highlight this point, that does not contain a subject and a verb. In other words, in a sentence, one part with subject and verb is a clause, while the rest of it without those two parts of speeches is a phrase. The examples like on the wall, in the water, over the horizon. A clause and a phrase may coexist in a sentence. For example, he is playing in the field. He is playing is a clause and in the field is a phrase. Another easy way of remembering the difference between a phrase and a clause is that a phrase does not make complete sense on its own and requires the help of other words to make it a complete sentence. Now let us look at the types of clauses. As we have already learned the definition of clause, let us now understand the types of clauses. Majorly, there are two types of clauses: independent clause and dependent clause. The independent clause is a complete sentence and a dependent clause is not. Let's learn about the two clauses in detail now. First one, the independent clause. The independent clause is also called the main clause. Independent clause is a type of clause which contains a subject and a verb. It expresses a complete meaningful thought. This clause can stand alone as a complete sentence. This type of a clause can also join other independent clauses or dependent clauses to make a compound sentence using coordinators such as and, but, nor, or, for, etc. In other words, independent clauses are grammatically complete statements. For example, Sita brushed her long golden hair. Raju enjoys sitting by the fireplace and reading. Planets revolve around the sun. Fourth example, she can hardly wait to watch the movie. In the above examples, Sita brushed her long golden hair. Meaning is very clear in it, and we can understand what the subject Sita has done. Observe the remaining examples. You can really follow what the subject does in these sentences. Second clause is dependent clause. The dependent clause is also known as the subordinate clause. As the name suggests, a clause which cannot stand alone as a complete meaningful sentence is called the dependent clause. This clause also has a subject and a verb, but does not express a complete thought. The thought or idea expressed by a dependent clause in this clause is unfinished. The dependent clause must be joined using subordinates with another clause to make a meaningful sentence. Asif plays hockey as he enjoys it. The word as. Please observe that in this sentence. The second example, Shajia could not catch the bus because she was late. The word because. Ali could not finish the mathematics test, although he knew all the sums. Arifa quickly ate her lunch as she was very hungry. Harris is back from work, so he must take rest. You must work hard if we want to succeed in life. In these sentences, as, because, although, so, if, they are the linkers, subordinates in dependent clause, and these will be added to the independent clause to get the complete sense in the statement. The dependent clauses are further categorized as noun clause, adjective clause, adverb clause. Noun clause. A noun clause is a group of words with a verb and a subject which acts as a noun. These clauses often begin with words such as that, what, when, how, who, why, where. In a noun clause, no commas are used. For example, how she behaved was not acceptable. In this sentence, how she behaved is a noun clause. The second example, he didn't know where he was. In this sentence, where he was is a noun clause. An adjective clause is also known as the relative clause. These clauses modify the noun or the pronoun in the sentence. It answers the questions like what kind, how many, which one. For example, women who are not married are called spinsters. The word who refers to woman. The second example, Delhi is the city where I was born. Where refers to Delhi. Third example, the diary which is black is mine. The word which refers to the diary. The third one is adverb clause. A clause which works as an adverb and has a subject and predicate of its own is called the adverb clause. Adverb clauses often answer questions of time, place, cause, purpose, condition. Example, he got a parking ticket because he parked his car illegally. In this statement, because he parked illegally is based on the condition. When she won the lottery, she decided to buy a car. The third example, my dog, although he is shy, loves people. These two sentences, the actions are based on a purpose, condition, cause. A relative clause. A relative clause is one kind of dependent clause. It has a subject and verb, but can't stand alone as a sentence. It is sometimes called an adjective clause because it functions like an adjective. It gives more information about a noun. A relative clause always begins with a relative pronoun, which substitutes for a noun phrase, or a pronoun when sentences are combined.
Let us now learn relative pronouns that we use in relative clauses. The relative pronouns are who, which, whose, whom, that. Let's look at the usage of the relative pronouns. The word who is used for people. For example, the woman who called yesterday wants to buy the house. In this sentence, who refers to the woman, and she was called yesterday and she wants to buy the house. Therefore, in this sentence, who refers to the woman. Likewise, you may use the word who for the subject or the speaking agent in a sentence. You can try this in other examples also. The subject is the speaker or the spoken object. Second one is which. It is used for things and animals. Let us look at that in an example. Did you see the letter which came today? I love the puppy which is jumping at the kitchen. The word which refers to an inanimate objects or inanimate subjects. The meaning of inanimate means inorganic. That means which doesn't have life. In these sentences, which refers to the letter. The letter is an inanimate subject and the puppy is an animate subject. Means it can be used for both animate and inanimate subjects. The next relative pronoun is whose. It is used for possessions of people or animals. For instance, in an example, he is a man whose opinion I respect. Second example, she is the student whose handwriting is the best in my class. These two examples, whose indicates the man, whose indicates the student. You may understand in other way also, a man's or a student's in possessive forms. The next relative pronoun is whom. It is used for people when the person is the object of the verb. So observe this example. The author whom you criticized in your review has written a letter in reply. Here, try to understand the connection between the words criticized and whom. Criticized is the verb here and whom is the object of the verb criticized. Next word is that. It is used for people, things and animals. The examples for this relative pronoun are the girl that we met in France has sent us a card. The second example, we live in a ground floor flat that backs onto a busy street. Do you like the cat that is sleeping underneath the table? In this way, the relative pronouns play an important role in the topic relative clauses, and these words always refer to the subjects. Relative clauses are classified into two kinds. The first one is defining relative clause and the second one is non-defining relative clause. We use defining relative clauses to give essential information about someone or something. Information that we need in order to understand what or who is being referred to. A defining relative clause usually comes immediately after the noun it describes. We usually use a relative pronoun. Example, who, that, which, whose and whom.
to introduce a defining relative clause. Defining relative clauses are composed of a relative pronoun, a verb, and optional other elements such as the subject or the object of the verb. Commas are not used to separate defining relative clauses from the rest of the sentence. If the defining relative clause were removed from the sentence would still be grammatically correct, but its meaning would have changed significantly. Let's look at some examples here. They are the people who want to buy our house. Here are some cells which have been affected. They should give the money to somebody who they think needs the treatment most. A defining relative clause is also called as a restrictive clause because it restricts or defines the meaning of a noun or noun phrase and provides necessary information about the noun in the sentence. And relative clause is non-defining relative clause. It can also be termed as non-restrictive clause. A non-defining relative clause adds additional information to a sentence. It is usually a proper noun or a common noun that refers to a unique person, thing, or event. It uses commas to show that the information is additional. The commas almost act like parentheses within the sentence. If the information between the commas is omitted, readers will still understand the overall meaning of the sentence. A non-restrictive clause or a non-defining clause is also known as a non-essential clause or phrase. It is not essential for understanding who or what we are talking about. We always use a relative pronoun or adverb to start a non-defining relative clause. Who, which, whose, when, or where. In non-defining relative clauses, which is never replaced by that. The examples of non-defining relative clauses are: my grandfather, who is 87, goes swimming every day. The house, which was built in 1883, has just been opened to the public. The award was given to Sarah, whose short story impressed the judges. In these three examples, if you observe, who is 87, that is referred to my grandfather, which was built in 1883, that refers to the house, whose short story impressed the judges. Whose short story impressed the judges, that refers to the award which was given to Sarah. To understand relative clauses, a flowchart is given to you. Please observe that. Explain that nicely. Relative clauses are of two types: defining, non-defining. Defining relative clause give relevant information. Non-defining relative clauses give extra information. We use relative pronouns like who, that, which, that, where, when, whose. Who is for people, which for things, where for places, when for time, whose for possession. Similarly, in the non-defining clauses also, relative pronouns are used except that. The difference between defining and non-defining clauses are also given in one slide. Please go through that clearly. Then you will be able to understand the difference between them, how they can be used in sentences. Let's try a few examples now. Fill in the blanks with who, whom, which, whose, where, when. First question is, can you give me back the money dash I lent you last month? The answer is which. Can you give me back the money which I lent you last month? Second one is, this is the restaurant dash we used to eat when we lived in Boston. It is a place we have to use where here. The next question is, Mark has sent me an email dash I haven't applied yet. Refers to the object, therefore we have to use the word which. Likewise, try filling in the blanks that are given to you. I'll quickly read them. Who is the person that is sitting next to Nancy? They complained about the wrong goods sent to them. This is Suzanne, whose husband works in the sales department. Candy is wearing a new dress which she bought in the summer sales. Monday is the day when bills have to be paid. Secretary showed me the filing cabinet where important documents are filed. Do you like the boy whom Mary is talking to? Children, you have another list of questions here. Please read the sentences and try to fill in the blanks and try to combine the sentences using the appropriate relative pronouns. Join the sentences to form a relative clause. Observe how it is being done. First question is, Billy the Kid was born in New York in 1869. His real name was William Bonney. There are two sentences here. You have to use a relative pronoun to combine these two sentences. Subject is Billy the Kid. You have to add William Bonney here to the subject. Answer is Billy the Kid. Real name was William Bonney. Was born in New York in 1869. You have to use the non-defining relative clause for it. The second sentence, second example. Alice had just killed her husband. Alice was planning her escape. Combine these two sentences using the word who, using the relative pronoun who. As I said earlier, the relative pronoun will come after the subject. Alice, who was planning her escape, had just killed her husband. Example. Third example is, Madge discovered the body. Madge's best friend was Alice. Combine these two sentences by using the word relative pronoun who. Okay. Who was Alice's best friend? Discovered the body. Example is, the woman is a doctor. She lives by the church. Combine these two sentences by using a relative pronoun. The woman who lives by the church is a doctor. Next example is, the garden was full of flowers. We visited it last week. Combine these two sentences by using a relative pronoun. Garden which we visited last week was full of flowers. Next example is, the man went to the police. His car was stolen. You can combine these two sentences by using a relative pronoun. Man whose car was stolen went to the police. Next example is, this is the neighborhood. I grew up here. You have to combine these two sentences by using a relative pronoun. The answer will be, this is the neighborhood where I grew up. Next example is, the bed was uncomfortable. I was sleeping on that bed. You can combine these two sentences by using a relative pronoun like this. The bed where I was sleeping was uncomfortable. Next sentence is, this is the time of the year. The flowers blossom then. Answer is, this is the time of the year when the flowers blossom. The next example is, the house was built 10 years ago. Its entrance is in the corner. You have to use a relative pronoun to combine these two sentences. Answer is, the house which entrance is in the corner was built 10 years ago. Dear students, please observe the sentences once again and see how the relative pronouns are used for the subjects that are given in the sentences. Use the relative pronoun in the combination of these sentences
You can see some coherence in the meaning. Thank you, students, for being so patient, for listening to this class. You can solve the textual questions on this topic. I hope this lecture could have helped you, at least to some extent, to get an idea on the topic relative clauses. Stay home and stay safe. This is Kishore Kumar Naredla, PGT in English, APRS, Appalrajgudam.